conversations. Let's have real conversations.
Get ready to stir it up.
Life events and everything in between. Let's go.
Get ready to stir it up.
No capping. If guests got you covered right up.
Get ready to stir it up. Stir it up.
Come on.
Get ready to stir it up.
Hello everyone, welcome to Stir It Up. Today my guest is Jemima Revel-Gane, and I've known Jemima for several years. She's just come back home to spend time with her family, and we had a bit of a chat a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, ooh, you would be an incredible inspiration for lots of young people, just looking at your journey and, you know, everything that you've done over the last couple of years. So I just thought, let's have a conversation. So we're having a conversation about making space for yourself in the world so you can thrive, right? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's really great to have you. So out of the horse's own lips, who's Jemima? If you wanted to tell us 2 things or 3 things about Jemima, what would you say about Jemima?
Who's Jemima? I would say Jemima is a community builder. I would say Jemima is a child of God, and Jemima is honestly just a fun person. Like Jemima loves to live, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Jemima liking to live, has it always been that way?
No, it hasn't. I think also partly because the more you grow, the more you discover the different things that like appeal to you, the more you almost have permission to like explore the world. And finding new things that you love. So for example, I picked up painting when I was in college. I learned that I love like flying drones when like post-college during the pandemic. So, you know, that's like, I would say the more you explore the world, the more you have time to and space. That kind of like has made me more of that, explore that side of myself.
So when you think about your journey, and we all have a journey that we've been on, what would you say are the key inflection points or milestones that have kind of brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, I would say 2 key ones, and I'll pick out of high school, because I think high school and like the transition to high school were very like pivotal moments in my life. The first one was when I was in grade 5. I had this teacher, Mrs. Labisia, who was, by the way, not even my teacher, but basically I didn't do well in school. I wasn't. Contrary to popular belief, I wasn't always the person who like came first in class. When I was in class 5, I could not be bothered about school. All I wanted to do was play football with the boys after school. And I was the best goalkeeper they'd seen ever. That was my thing. And then
You should have kept that, you know, you never know.
But the funny thing is, honestly, I'll probably be wealthier today. Like I was playing soccer for some team, but you know, we move.
We move. I agree.
So I used to love to like play with the boys after school. And Mrs. Labisia said to me, she was like, "You don't like studying, so we had these things called achievement awards every month. So when you do well, like in class or subject, they will give you an achievement award. So she said, for every achievement award that you get, I'm going to give you, it was like 1 CD or something like that." And for me, that was it. I was like, "You're telling me that if I study hard, you give me money? Let's go." And so I started like studying hard, but this was also like by term 2, you know, so got a bunch of achievement awards up until term 3. And then the day of our speech and prize giving day when I was in class 5, I wasn't getting a prize. I was really sad because like by that time I'd come to realize that when you study hard, people kind of respect you. And so I was like not going for speech and prize giving day. My mom was like, "No, you're going." So she took me to the salon. I got my hair done. Pony back, you know, big smile. I sat in the front row and I clapped for my friends. And for me, after that, I was like, no, they don't have 2 heads. They have 1 head. They just studied hard consistently over a period of time. And that's where my academics took off. That was in class 5 to class 6. Now, by the time I got to the big school, this must have been like form 2. Now, if you know the way GIS is set up, anything goes in the big school. It's all about vibes. You know, it's vibes and academics, but like the social part of it, there's a lot of like the vibes component. But I met this girl, Chantel Efigane, who I still am the biggest fangirl of till today. She was given this story at this thing that we had called Thank You Jesus, where she was talking about how she was basically going to Yale on full financial aid, and she was coming back home twice a year. They were going to pay for her to like travel the world and live her best life, you know. And I was like, oh, what is that, and how do I get there? And I think why that was
your eyes
important.
just open and light up?
They really did. They really, really, really did. And it's funny because like fast forward like 9 years later, I ended up going to Yale. And it's funny because a lot of people on campus thought that she was my older sister when I got there. Like a lot of the professors who had interacted with both of us. And I would say like that was a pivotal moment because it gave me something to focus on. Like all throughout the noise of GIS, because it can be a very noisy school to be in, right? It gave me something to focus on. And year after year, there almost seemed to be like confirmations of like, when you work hard, these are the things you can achieve. So we had Chantal Efigane, we had Yetunde Mero, we had Arakwa Welbeck, we had, like these are names of people who like went on to do amazing things and like really build successful lives for themselves. So yeah, I would say those are two pivotal moments that really set me on that track of like, if you focus, you can have anything you want pretty much.
And as you've been on that journey and you've had these two pivotal moments, do you ever feel like there's anything you could have done differently?
Honestly, yes.
Maybe played football?
No, not even played
Just
football.
joking.
No, I mean, played football, yes. But and it's funny because I then morphed into like the biggest girly girl you've ever seen. And like all I wear is heels these days. But I would say the one thing I do wish I did differently is I wish I thought about longevity as opposed to just like tasks. And what I mean by that is we put ourselves under so much pressure, like to do well. Like doing well was like before our mental health, right? Doing well was the most important thing. Until tomorrow, I still have dreams where I'm having a panic attack that like I missed my history paper 6 or I missed my history paper 4. And you would think like I would say that and you would laugh, but these are serious dreams that I have, and so I would say that this notion of like I must get this at all costs, as much as that can fuel you towards getting that, I think there's a healthier way of going about it.
Do you think parents have a role to play in that? Or is that the responsibility of that 16-year-old navigating their way through high school?
I think it's the responsibility of the 16-year-old navigating their way through high school. But I think parents could be a reinforcing voice of like, hey, by the way, it's not this at all costs. It's not this at all costs. Like your health is important. Your mental health is important. Making sure that you have that clarity of thoughts. Like you're well rested for the next day to be able to study, not to study all night and then you wake up like and you're tired.
And you're cranky.
But you have to like push through the day. I would say that's the one thing I wish I did differently.
Okay. So I know you're Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, and you've talked about that a bit, where your faith is the number one thing for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, over this journey you've been on, what are the biggest conflicts that you've experienced?
I would say it's interesting because it's never been an external conflict. It's been an internal conflict. And I'll explain. When I was in high school, I met my college counselor, by the way, was one of the most amazing people that I met. She was like the first fly Christian I met. She used to come to school with like her designer stuff. She had this phrase, she was like, I can step on the devil in my Chanel shoes. Do you know what I mean? Like she was really about like living life, and this was this very holistic, beautiful, community-driven way, but fiercely passionate about God. So I think I built up so much of my knowledge of who God was and who I was in God, like throughout my high school years were very formative for me. Like I cannot tell, we were praying like 2 hours a day. Like we had a 1 hour break time, then after school, me and my friends would gather to like pray. Like we just really, you know what I mean? Like we spent time like really building our faith in high school. And I think for me, taking that and exporting that into the college setting was one thing. Exporting that to the college setting in America is another thing. Exporting that to a college setting in Yale is a whole different ballgame altogether, where I would say a lot of people on the college campus aren't just like atheists, like apathetic towards God. A lot of people are actually very like hostile towards like religion. And it's almost like encouraged as some sort of like discourse like in the classrooms. And it's really strange. And a lot of like Christians banded together, like found that community from like just that otherness that we sometimes felt on campus. So I would say for me, the huge thing was being able to come into relationships and spaces with the fullness of like my intimacy with God being reflected. So whereas people know Ojoma is very close to her family, they would be like, yeah, Ojoma is a person of faith, but I don't think they realized how much it dictated like, and it dictates like so much of my life, and I found myself almost like hiding that like through the years.
So was that you minimizing, was the conflict a bit of you minimizing
Exactly,
yourself
yes.
within that context?
It was me minimizing like who I showed up as spiritually, because I think for me, I never wanted anyone to feel judged by me. I think that was like my biggest like fear. It was almost like I never wanted anyone to feel like I was judging them or I was judging their life choices. I'm very aware that the way I live my life is different. Some would even call it crazy, you know. And I'm never trying to like put that on anyone else. But for God's sake, this is how I want to live. I want to be allowed to live in this type of way, you know, without having like 300 billion voices about how like you have freedom of choice. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm using my freedom of choice to choose God. So I would say like that was the biggest conflict. And it's funny because it was never external. It was very much like internal.
And now looking back, I'm sure that's kind of evolved in some way or in some shape or form. And now that it's evolved and you look back, do you feel like there's anything you could have done differently? Do you feel like if you were talking to your younger self, you'd say something else?
Yes, I'll 100% say that. First and foremost, there is enough space in the world for Jemima Revalkane.
I think that's powerful.
Like there is,
because we don't recognize that.
Don't.
Yeah,
we really don't, because we're almost conditioned to believe that there's spaces for aspects of my identity. So if I show up as the fun one, you know, then there's space for me. If I show up as like, you know, the smart one, there's space for me. If I show up as like the super successful career one, there's space for me. If you know what I mean? Like there's enough space for the complexity of my character and my personality for me to show up fully. So again, I'll say there's enough space for Jemima Abigail Revalkane in the world.
You're called Abigail.
Abigail, yes, that's my
What's
middle
your
name.
Nigerian name?
Adaeze.
Adaeze.
Yes.
So let's take it. There's enough space for
Jemima Abigail Adaeze Revalkane in the world.
Your pops will be proud to hear you say
that.
No,
he really will. And I think like for me, a part of what unlocked that mentality for me was meeting people who, you know, you kind of got to push the envelope a little with them. They're like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, you know, like I'm going to church. And they're like, oh, wait, I want to go to church too, you know. And you realize that like, or like, oh, for example, a huge part of like my reputation on campus was I didn't drink. And all my friends, by the way, were the partiers. They were the ones throwing like the biggest parties. So they would go shopping for alcohol for parties. And then they would like, one particular story, they left and then they realized that they didn't get any apple juice, which was like Jemima's signature drink on campus. So they Ubered back to the liquor store to go get apple juice because they knew I was going to be at their party, realizing that the more you're vocal about who you are, the more you're vocal about the things that are important to you, as you make space for that, people make space for you. And I think that has also led me to just have like deeper relationships with people, like fuller relationships with people where I'm able to bring my full self. So, classic example, 30 December, Ghana, amazing, fun times. I was on a 21-day fast, and I was very clear with people. I was like, look, I have church 11:30 to 12:30, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. I would love to hang out with you. Fit yourself into that schedule, you know. And people like they're like, oh yeah, no. And sometimes they would even remind you when you forget. They're like, oh no, she has church at this time. Okay, let's do it at this other time, you know. And I think like for me, there's something about just having friends who see you in the fullness of who you are and choose to love you and choose to like stay, you know. Yeah, I would say that's kind of like been my journey there.
And that's a depth of authenticity that I sometimes feel we are lacking in the world. Thankfully, you're not tainted by life in so many ways. But I think that it would be really beautiful to see you continue to evolve in this level of authenticity and also just even having that ecosystem and that community of friends that matter. I think one of the things you have talked about is community, right? And I get a sense of what community was for you 10 years ago, what it's for you now. But when you think about community looking into the future, like looking over that horizon, right? And thinking, this is what community means, this is what community could mean to me. What could it mean?
That's actually a really good question, because I think I'm at a really interesting point in my life, like where like going back to New York, I'm transitioning to a new job. I'm like going to be living with myself for the first time, you know, in my adult life. Like it's a lot of newness all at the same time. Over the past 3 years, community has really been, my house has been like the gathering spot. So Think about your cold negative 15 degrees Celsius winter nights. Everybody's in Jemima's apartment. We're playing games, we're cooking light soup, we're feeding, we're taking care of each other. And that has meant so much to me over the past 3 years. But I think as I transition into this new phase of my life, I'm thinking more about how I can do that for myself. Because I think that's one of my, as much as it's one of my biggest strengths, I also think it's one of my biggest weaknesses, where I can give and have nothing left. And I don't realize that I need to be full to be able to give in an authentic way, where it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like this is what I have to do or else I'm failing some version of who Jemima is, So I think on the go forward for me, community it's going to be quieter, It's no longer just roll by Jemima's apartment. Hey, yo, anybody home? No, it's not gonna be that. It's gonna be quieter. It's also going to be like doing things that I want to do, like by myself on the spur of the moment, which might mean that I'm not there at 11 p.m. when someone wants to cry about her boyfriend, but that's okay. We can cry about it at like 3 p.m. tomorrow, like you'll be alive.
Oh, we can do it on the phone for 5 minutes.
We can do it on the phone for 5 minutes and time ourselves. And I think also just like invest in like romantic relationships as well. I think that's been one thing that like guys have always said to me. They're like, you're always with your girlfriends. Like I can never get you on the phone with myself, And I'm like, yeah, but like I don't know. I'm like, that could be fun. So like let's see how that evolves and how that transitions to. But in terms of like the much longer time span of things, when I think about like my life and the type of person I want to be, I want my family, and by family I mean like husband, kids. I want us to be grounded in community as well. I would love my partner to like have a close knit of like guy friends that love God and love each other and hold each other accountable, because I think we don't talk enough about the importance of black male friendships and how those can be a really good lifeline for them. Men are like, hey, yo, dog, you good, yeah, good.
And we're good.
We're good. And then they play video games.
And then someone commits suicide.
Literally.
It's like, I didn't know that was going on with him.
Literally, right? Yeah. Or you ask, like, I remember I once asked the guy, his best friend, like I spent like 5 minutes with him, and the boy like really opened up. I was like, oh, I didn't know this about like XYZ. He was like, what? He was like, what? Yeah. He was like, I didn't know that. I was like, you've known this man for 12 years of your life. How do you not know like these basic things about him, So I think like I want my family and my future to be grounded in community as well. Like for me, yeah.
It's lovely to hear you say that, because growing up, I mean, one of the things that was really important to me was I wanted a husband who didn't like football and who didn't have many friends, right?
Wow.
And for me, it was like, my husband was like my safe space, right?
I get you.
But to be honest with you, I want a husband who likes football.
Yeah, and has a lot of friends.
Right, and has friends, right? But real friends.
Yeah.
And because I often think like men don't share enough.
Yeah, especially with each other.
And I think that the time I have found men to share the most is at the beginning of a relationship. And even with that, it's like 3 months or 2 months of sharing, and then it's switched off, right? And so then they're back in their shell. And that must be really hard life, right? Because my daughters come back from school and they have a whole list of things they want to talk about. I have people who work with me who have a whole list of things they want to talk about, and it's the girls, right? But when it comes to guys, you kind of have to like pull, and say, oh, I think, oh, I feel, oh, what do you think, right? And that must be really hard, not having an outlet or just even knowing that I think. And so I couldn't agree more. Just finding a partner who has a community of friends and people who...
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I think there's an element of selfishness to that for me. And I'll explain.
What, you like your space?
No, not even just that. I'll explain. I think I've definitely met people who... There was this article, by the way, like recently in the New York Times that was like, men have few friends and their partners pay for it. Which is to mean, like, I feel like women, we have a way of just gravitating towards community. So it's like, okay, if I have a question about career, I'll go to this person. If I have a question about like relationships, I'll go to this person, right? But like men play video games with their friends and then they come to their partners and they want to talk about they want to talk about everything. Like you're their wife, mother, therapist, girlfriend, just everything. Cook, cleaner, all of that, like all in one, right? And so I think for me, I understand that the most sustainable relationships occur when you have other relationships in your life that feed you as well. Obviously
healthy relationships.
Other healthy relationships in your life that feed you as well. Obviously your partner like is a huge part of that. but it's not the only component to it, not the only component of it. And so like I would say like that's also like another lens that I view it as. And apart from that, I just want a good group of friends, couple vacation, couple retreat, lock the kids somewhere with some old parents,
You're not going to be doing that,
just like, lock them all somewhere, like just live your life, and have that like good group of like friends.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's lovely to hear you say these things, and often we think some of these things are idealistic, but they're also the things that feed our souls and feed our minds and just kind of make us more whole as people. So thinking about young adults today, the part of the mind that's responsible for regulating your behavior and how you think and how you things that are right and safety and so on doesn't develop to you about 24. Well, I think it's 24.
Probably 25, 26, 27.
Well, but the fact that it's in your 20s is scary. It is scary.
Because your kids are like...
Yes, because I've got kids. And I'm thinking they could be making stupid decisions.
And not even know.
And they have zero control over that, right? It's their minds are just not developed to kind of help them make the right conscious decisions. It would be really good to get your point of view around if there are 3 things that you could say to a young person today about choices, right? And it's not just about, beating them down with, what's right and what's wrong and all of that. Yeah. But what would be the lessons you've learned that you want to say, this might be something just to even think about or reflect on as this 16 or 17-year-old going in to write your IGCSEs, who's just about to, on the cusp of going into university. Yeah. What would be your thoughts?
I would say there are like 3 key things for me. Firstly, integrity matters. Okay. That's high on the list of things that I don't compromise on, because there's a beautiful, I'm a nerd, I'm sorry, but there's this book, it's called A Man for All Seasons. It's by Robert Bolt. So basically, the king tries to get Thomas More to swear this thing, saying that he believes that the king's marriage to the king's sister-in-law is actually right and is of God. And Thomas More says, I'm not going to say any of that. And so they put him in jail. And then they send Thomas More's daughter to like try and convince him. And she says to him, Daddy, why don't you just say the words out of your mouth, but hold the truth in your heart? And he says, for me to say the words out of my mouth, but hold the truth in my heart, would be as though I hold my life as water in my palms before God. And if I'm to break my word, which is to part my hands and let this water fall to the floor, what chance do I ever have of finding myself again? And integrity matters. Integrity matters. Integrity matters. It's not just who you are when the cameras are on, when people are looking at you.
Cameras are on.
Yeah, right? But it's not just that. It's who are you on the daily? Who are you when no one's looking? Who are you when no one's checking the books? Because that will seep into your character. And character, you can't buy. Character will keep you where talent will get you to, right? This character will keep you where hard work will get you to. So I would say that's one. Number 2.
And just the fact that you should be able to look at yourself in the mirror every day.
And adjust your character if you need to. I've had times in my life where I've been like, okay, this isn't good, we need to work on this. This isn't good, we need to work on this. Mark yourself against the script of like your standards. That's number 1. Number 2, I would say find your people, find your tribe, find your community. Just like find the people who enrich your life and who care more about you than as a person than you as social capital or some icon. It's not about, I'm friends with Jemima because I think Jemima is popular or like whatever. No, it's like I'm friends with Jemima because I care about who Jemima is and where she's going. I have friends that market me if I dare to switch lanes. One of my best friends in particular, there was one day she called me and we'd been out the night before. She called me and she was like, what was that behavior? She was like, look, ma'am, we don't behave like that. Okay? Like, I'm talking like people who don't care if a conversation of setting you right will break the friendship because they're more invested in who you are as a person. Okay. And also like in terms of finding your people, that can be your family, but in the mix of all of that should be people who just are sold out to you as a person, right? And I would say thirdly, find people who've walked the path that you want to walk on. Because I'll use Yale as an example, right? Whereas I knew, okay, I wanted to go to an Ivy League, I wanted to go to Yale. I got into Yale, then I had to actually go to Yale. right? As in, I had not
The very different experiences.
very different experiences. Getting into Yale is, oh my God, yeah, I'm going to Yale. Where are you going? Yale. Where are you going? Yale, right? Literally, that was getting into Yale. That lasted all of 6 months. And the next 4 years was actually being at Yale. And I think what that allows you to do, finding people who've walked the path that you want to walk, is that it teaches you what the cost actually is. I did not clock in my mind that moving to America for college would mean being separated from my family. I did not know how traumatic that could possibly be, right? As far as I knew, I was going to Yale, and that was it. That was the beginning, middle, and end of it. So I'd say, yeah, like talk to people who've walked the path that you want to walk, whether that's in career, that's, you know, whatever it is, like marriage, whatever it is, faith, whatever it is, like find people who've walked that path, understand what it costs them, understand what it costs different people, right? And then that way you also have like mentors, and you have people to be like, hey, this is what I'm going through. How did you navigate it? This is what do you know what I mean? Like I think, and that just leads again to building that support system, like for yourself. So yeah, those would be the main 3 things. 1, integrity. 2, find your people, find your community, and 3, find people who walked the path that you want to walk.
And I especially like the thing about finding people who've walked the path, because a lot of the time we feel like, but their story is not going to be my story.
It's not, but they're going to be similar challenges.
Yes, exactly. So the hurdles along the way could be similar.
Exactly.
And you don't necessarily have to experience something to know how to navigate it, right? So you could learn from other people's experiences.
Yes.
And course correct ahead of things happening to you.
And I think that takes humility to be able to understand and realize that, like, I don't have to walk into every pothole, you know, and be hurt in my boo-boo feelings, and then, you know, then I pick myself up and I've learned a lesson for life. There are lots of life lessons that I've learned from
just looking
at other people's lives, but that I've also learned from plays, that I've learned from literature, that I've learned from reading, you know. And I think it takes some level of humility to be like, no, I don't know it all. And I'm okay with that. I'm here to learn. I'm willing to learn, and like that's what I want to do.
It's been really great having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
And 30 December is finished.
Yes.
You're going home soon.
Oh my God. I'm so cringe when people call America home to me, because I'm like, but yes, I guess I'm going to a home.
You're going to your
And
it's your space, and you do need to own that,
Yes.
right? And it's you creating your new world
Yes.
and your new community.
I'm going to one of my homes.
You're going to one of
Yes.
your homes.
Yes.
And home is a place, but home is also people, isn't
Exactly.
it? And home is food, and
Yes.
home is experiences. It's different things, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
And I was going to say, and I think the beauty of that is, somebody said something once that really struck me, that when you have a life that's rich with experiences, and you travel and you meet people and you love people all across the globe, your heart is never really at home in any one place.
That's
because
true.
You're constantly missing, you know, different things. So as much as I've been home for December, it's been amazing. I've been with my family. My siblings are in Berlin. I really miss them. Like, I miss my girlies in New York. I miss my girlies in London. You know, I miss my best friends that live in Greece. Like, your heart is just everywhere in a way that it would never all be all at once, you know, in the same geography as maybe it used to be before. And that's okay. And that's okay.
that's okay. You should write more. You should share more. And it'll be great to just see your journey over time. And I know you're going to be doing amazing things looking into the future.
Amen.
It's been good to have you. It's been a great chat. We thought we were going to be talking for 15 minutes, and we ended up talking for half an hour. I hope you enjoy this as much as we did.
Yes.
So now to the stir it up part of stir it up, right? So cocktails. And so this is where the evening goes downhill from here. So Jemima, there you go. Do you want to try a cocktail?
Thank you. I will let you know my honest feedback.
I'm going to pretend like I can't hear anything you have to say.
Oh, this is good. This is really good. What's in it?
Start guessing. It actually is good.
I feel like there's some mango in here. Like, I feel like tinted mango.
There is mango.
Oh, this is really good. Side hustle? Maybe cheers to that.
Stir it up.
Stir it up.
Thank you.